Welcome back to Heart with me, Shakti Sundari. Today we're in the heart of the Gloucestershire countryside and we're just about to meet an amazing sacred musician, Craig Pruess. Craig is a composer, a producer. He's been BAFTA and Grammy Award nominated. He's produced and composed music for films such as Bend It Like Beckham. He's worked with outstanding musicians like Sir Cliff Richard. And of course, for me, the one most touching thing is that he created and produced the Sacred Chants of Devi, which I love so much and use in my own work. So I'm super excited to meet and speak with you, Craig. Welcome.
Very nice to be here. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Really am excited. So we've already been talking before we've come on camera to get to know a little bit about you. And so the first thing I didn't realize actually before today is that you are from America originally.
I'm an American. I'm a Yank. But here many years, many years. Paid a lot of UK taxes over the years,
What is it that brought you to the UK?
It was music, definitely.
So you were saying in your original background that you were talking just now about how you studied at MIT.
That's right.
Quite an illustrious US university, and that you studied philosophy of science and physics, and you have a lot of books here. So I'm getting a sense that learning is very important to you.
I would say yes, absolutely. And it's never ending, is it? And really the inquiry into truth and the nature of reality is as deep as life itself. And as a musician, I feel lucky that I can do work which touches those areas. And I'd like to express what I learn from my understanding of life and put that into my creative work.
So how did you get from being a physics student, philosophy of science, into music? Were you already a musician as well?
Yeah.
Is that something you've always been?
Yes, that's right. So from the age of 8, I played a lot of music instruments. I was tremendously enthusiastic. I had the energy for 3 instruments, trumpet, piano, and oboe. And then I even expanded out for percussion. And I grew up in a county, Westchester County, north of New York City, about 50 miles north of New York City, that had very good facilities. The summer school, we could play in all kinds of percussion ensembles, swing bands, classical orchestras. And I was soloing and doing concerts from the age of 10, 11. I did the heightened trumpet concerto when I was 11. The environment was very healthy, active, and joyous in music. So I'm very grateful for that. Plus, I had the very great fortune to have some wonderful music teachers that believed in me. And for instance, recently on a trip to Los Angeles for launching one of our refugee songs in Hollywood, I got to see, after 45 years, my trumpet teacher's son. And he is now playing trumpet in Star Wars, Star Trek, all the big films. Amazing. And we were just recalling that his father was very strict. But he said, Craig, he considered you one of his prize students. And that affected me so deeply, because I was always wanting to please him. And to hear that. And it was a great reunion. So it reminded me of the richness that I had in my upbringing.
Were your family very musical?
My mother played piano beautifully by ear. So I had a jazz trio playing piano with drums and bass, upright bass, when I was 14. And often at these parties, I'd be asked songs, Tea for Two, or Try to Remember. These songs that were not my generation. I'd go home, ask my mother, and she'd sit on the piano, oh yes, and I'd look over her shoulder and write the chord changes and go back and play it at the next event that I was playing piano.
Wow, so did you have a classical training then in musical theory?
That's right, absolutely, yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful.
So I had very good rock-solid classical training in trumpet, piano, and then, of course, in America you have the jazz bands. And so from the age of 14, 15, they let me wear sunglasses in the back and stand up and blow the trumpet solos. My last year, when I was 17, this is just before I went to MIT, I was president of the band, a 20-piece swing band. And we played in all the other schools. We did radio broadcasts in New York City. And I loved it because it's such vital music.
Yeah.
So it's the energy of music that I felt very blessed from an early age. You know. Things were happening with me in my teenage years where I was looking very deeply into some more esoteric things. And my mother was noticing. She gave me books when I was 13 on Edgar Cayce, The Sleeping Prophet, and other trance mediums, books on UFOs, paranormal research in the Soviet Union. And I really lapped this up. I thought this was incredible. Then when I was 17, 18, my sister became a teacher of transcendental meditation for Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Very beautiful technique. Now, I was very doubtful in those early years. I was studying, and I thought it was a bit woo-woo-woo, the practice of meditation. But my mother and father learned, and then when I had left MIT, went to Africa, I was teaching at the Conservatoire of Music in Nairobi, Kenya. I went back to Charlottesville, Virginia, saw my sister give a talk on the benefits of meditation. And I really saw that inner light in her. And I said, okay, I'll learn. I'm not sure anything will happen. But my very first meditation, I went extremely deeply, clarity, clear as a bell. Wow. And that changed my life. I was 21 years old. And I carried on the meditation practice for the rest of my life. Wow. Which is still going to go on a long time in my life, by the way.
So here you are, 21. Were you still at college then, or you'd finished, you completed?
I'd finished. I started MIT when I was 17.
Oh,
I had skipped a grade in school, so I was ready to leave home. I loved it. Yeah, my parents gave me a lot of freedom, and I was very self-sufficient. I'd already traveled quite a bit. My parents had traveled, and I felt great. I felt very connected to world cultures as well, even from a young age. You know. Right. So for me, the world cultures and being connected to the world has been an important part of my life. Yeah. I would say that started when I was 11, 12. Really.
And is that something, again, that just came from within you, or was there stuff around in the family or the cultural context that would have influenced that?
I think all those things. My mother and father, very turned on people, really grateful. My father was more the dynamic, I can do anything, and he was a successful entrepreneur. My mother was the artist and more quiet, very musical. They're both very musical, but it was a combination of being around them, also traveling from the age of 7, 8, a lot, right, to other countries, and then also the positivity of that particular era in the U.S., which is 60s, right? The wonderful music coming out of USA, Motown, the English invasion. I was absorbing all this. I would hide the transistor radio under my pillow from the age of 12, 13, get all the charts. So I was drinking in the music of other cultures at the same time. So world music for me has always been magic, always from an early age. You know. But of course I was very disciplined as a musician, and I could study, sit in orchestras, read anything, and that gave me a lot of freedom to explore other kinds of music after that. Yeah.
Wow, it already sounds so rich. It already sounds like you've done so much by the time you're 21, and then you have this experience in meditation. So
yes. What
was it, NTM, transcendental
That's
meditation?
That's right. Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. And what struck me the very first time that I meditated, it was number one, that it was effortless. And number two, that your consciousness can be so settled, not asleep, but perfectly aware, hyper aware. And I thought, why didn't anybody tell me this like this? Then I have another thought, come back to the mantra, and then settle down. Wow, this is amazing. Oh, there I go again. And then, so it's like that. But I realized immediately the value, so I incorporated it in my daily practice, so twice a day. Because that's the genius of TM, is that it gave people a practice. Just like a musician, if you want to get good on an instrument, you got to do your scales, arpeggios, and work on the difficult fingering. And then when you play, people say, wow, but then you say to people, you don't want to see me practice. You know, so the same with meditating. You meditate every day. What happens? You can spread so much joy. You know, it helps relationships a lot. And I just felt I was very lucky at an early age to get exposed to that.
Yeah.
See the benefits, so I could anchor it into my daily routine. So I really missed all the drink, drugs, rock and roll.
You never even went in that
No.
direction. Amazing. So, and your sister and your parents were also practicing?
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever I went home, the family meditated together. Yeah.
That's cool.
And share silence with people is very beautiful. Do you notice when the people you love and you like to be with, that you share silence? And to be able to share silence with your best friends, the silence is rich. You know. Yeah. I'm very lucky.
I wonder if you could just explain what your practice is, actually.
Yes, yes. Well, my practice really evolved. When I came to England, I'd already been meditating a couple of years. And I kept up my practice when I was living in Kenya. I had a beautiful room at the YMCA in Nairobi, Kenya. I'd go across the road to the conservatory where I had my own room, piano. And so I have a lot of early memories of my regular meditation associated with Africa. When I came to England, for me, the biggest breakthrough was when my fellow musicians also were interested to learn to meditate. So we'd meditate together. And one of my first bands, Visitor 2035, which formed in 1973, was a very ambitious band, instrumental band mostly. But we were playing in the Mahavishnu, Chick Corea, Return to Forever, quite virtuoso music, very loud, very fast. So we'd play in a lot of the rock festivals, and the rock bands would stand by and say, "Whoa, what are you guys doing?" And I turn to them and say, "We meditate. We meditate." And Mahavishnu group was very loud and very fast, but they also Mahavishnu John McLaughlin had been with Sri Jim Noy and taken on a yoga practice and expressed that yoga practice in their music, which I think really gave it a white light, amazing power. Later he formed Shakti with Zakir Hussain, the tabla maestro. And again, this was music that I thought was a cutting edge of music, to take that energy of Indian classical music, which is so powerful and so exalted, and yet put it into rock music or fusion music or jazz fusion music. So this was my real passion in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So then when I started being able to meditate with my co-musicians, I started doing...
Ask about that?
Yeah.
Did you suggest it, or did they just observe something in you and ask about what you were doing?
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's very, very astute to point that out, because everyone comes in their own time.
Yeah.
You know, you can talk a lot to people and they just... But it's your way of being.
Yeah.
That people will say eventually, "What is it that you're doing? And why is it that you, when we're tired, you just keep going?" That's usually in my case. And I say, it's very easy to learn to do this and that. So one by one they learned. Some took longer, because in a lot of people there's a deep skepticism about anything that's not, of the mainstream. And these were still early days, so, So when it was just a wonderful thing to see that group in its full power, and to be able to do that. And at that time I started doing advanced courses and joining Transcendental Meditation had a very powerful advanced program called the TM City program. And the TM City program was used a lot to change the fabric of society in terms of groups of us men would go to war zones and practice the TM City program, and all the fighting would stop in those countries.
And can you give me an example of when this was happening?
Yeah, this was happening, it happened in Iran during the Iranian Revolution. A group went there. It happened in the Philippines. It happened in Kenya. I went with a group in Yugoslavia, the weeks they were bombing Sarajevo. And we set up in Pula. And the day we set up, all the bombing stopped. And we did our program for 2 weeks. This is all documented by statisticians. It's called the Maharishi effect. People can Google the Maharishi effect.
Right, the Maharishi effect. So how many of you were
So
there?
12 countries it's been proven. We had 600 men.
600 in
Yeah.
one place?
Oh yeah, we took the hotel and we put all the foam out and we would do 6-7 hours a day.
Of meditation practice?
Meditation, yoga practice, breathing pranayams, and then the TM City technique, which is a very beautiful ancient technique based on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, where you go through fulfilling very subtle movements of the mind or awareness, from compassion, happiness, to friendliness, to strength of an elephant, knowing knowing the arrangement of stars, and also your own body. And then the last one is to have lightness and to lift up. So when we would do it, we'd all hop around like frogs.
So you can do the yogic flying thing, which I've watched on videos, and
Yes,
I just find
right.
it amazing.
Yeah.
What actually happens?
Well, it's not using any effort. You see, if you have Patanjali was a great scientist. He lived 2,500 years ago. And he understood that the mind itself can create new laws of physics. And
Sorry, who was this? I didn't hear the 2,000 years ago. Who was it?
it was Patanjali,
Oh, okay. Sorry.
one of the great yoga teachers. And Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are a resource of incredible knowledge. There's commentary. Many different teachers have done commentary. Particularly Sri Ravi Shankar in The Art of Living has done an incredible commentary. Now, this is the 70s, and Maharishi Mahesh Yogi took the maybe 21 of the different siddhis, or the sutras, from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and we practice these as a meditation technique. And it was extremely powerful, because what you did is you would take it to the level of silence and no thought, and plant a desire. So the coordination for fulfilling desires is not by going for the desire, but take it deep into your own inner silence, and then let it blossom. So if we apply that to the flying, the yogic flying technique, you take that, and it only happens in inner silence. You take it, and when it manifests, you jump up, you hop. So that's what we're doing.
So it's not to do with Kundalini energy, or?
Kundalini energy was a big result of it, definitely.
That's what I imagined. That everyone's so.
And it was, and the first manifestation of, even before you would take off, was that you had this incredible energy going up your spine. But it's a very scientific technique that the mind learns to fulfill its desires, but not on the level of desire. It's on another level, which
You've got
is
to explain that.
transcendental consciousness. Okay, so what does transcendental consciousness mean? And my sister's a TM teacher, but I'm not a TM teacher. But I was so immersed in this knowledge, I can talk a little bit about this, all right? So transcendental meditation is basically, you take the mind from the gross level of thought. You have thought, and you have thoughts to speak. I have to get up, get a glass of water. What am I going to do today? Your creative work. So on the level of the mind, you have activity, right? So TM technique, transcendental meditation technique, introduces a sound, a meaningless sound that you use. It's called a mantra. And a mantra is you use it effortlessly. So you start it, you sit comfortably after a minute or so, you start it effortlessly. You don't resist any thoughts, but you observe any other thoughts that come. So you observe, there I go. And then you pick up the mantra again. Don't try to resist any thoughts. This is the key. It's an effortless technique. Right. Then after maybe 5 minutes, the mind becomes more subtle, becomes more silent. The mantra itself may be more silent. And maybe, again, some other thoughts come, but you bring yourself back to the mantra. And then all the scientific evidence which wires you up, your pulse rate, your what's it called, metabolism. All of these things change during this time. And what the doctor said, it's a wakeful, it's a resting wakefulness. that happens. And there's another term. A long time since I've talked about this. But basically that your body becomes extremely settled. Hardly any activity, more settled than sleep. And that the mind has become very subtle. There may be times when the mantra disappears and you have no thoughts. The breathing almost stops. Now this is a deep rest for the nervous system that you never get in sleep. In sleep, you're dreaming, metabolism's working, you're trying to digest your food. So this is another state of the whole physiology where it gets to deeply rest. And it's rest for the nervous system, which you don't get in sleep. So I found after some years of meditating, I didn't need to sleep as much. And my sleep was deeper, more restful, but the real rest that I got was in deep meditation. So take that transcendental meditation means that the transcendental aspect of the mind becomes stronger in your life. The very subtle part of your thinking. Where do thoughts come? Mozart used to say that he didn't sit there and think, da 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 da. No, he would sit and in one moment he had the whole piece. He saw the structure and he wrote it down before he forgot. There's a part of the mind that is outside the bounds of space and time. There's a part of the mind. And you could say it's the area of the genius. Geniuses say, people say, where did you get that idea to Tesla or these geniuses, Einstein? And the thing is that it resides deep in our consciousness. It's not something outside of ourselves. Our consciousness is so deep. So the transcendental part of life nourishes all our activity, but it's when the mind becomes very still. So in that stillness, if you then put another layer on and plant a desire, this is called sandhima, where you keep the mind still but plant an idea of something you do and then leave it, completely leave it. So this is how we did that practice of the yogic flying. We would move the transcendental consciousness. You can sit in a bath, that's nice, but if you move, you feel the heat more. So it's like that. It's like this transcendental consciousness is it's like the fabric of our life, really, in a lot of ways.
So you spoke there about Mozart and how he downloaded instantly. Is that how you work with your music?
There are different ways. Sometimes it'll be that it's a beautiful day and I'm looking out over the valley and I'm sitting at the piano and it just flows and I think, that's nice. I wish I had a recorder and put it on, or I can remember it. Often I have to do it on demand. Someone will show me a piece of film and luckily, something in my mind works in a way that you show me any piece of film, I can immediately imagine the music that should go with that, or under a voice, we call it underscoring in a film. So there are many different ways to work. I love to collaborate because then you're combining the consciousness of that person with your person. I find new collaborations amazing because you have their whole life experience. And I'm bringing my life experience. And you trusting, of course you have to make your choices of collaboration astutely. You use your intelligence and maturity. And I love that because you don't know what's going to happen. And yet what comes out often, which is so satisfying, it's bigger than either of you. And it's even bigger than both of you. It's something different, like making a child. You look at your own children and you think, wow, of course I see me in there, right? The mom sees, yes, I see me in there, but there's something more. So that's another way to create music, right? And then the other way of creating music for me, there are two ways. One is to be in complete silence. For me, my daily practice is my backbone, right? And often when I come out of that deep silence inside, when I come into my studio, I'm very hypersensitive. And I go and mix tracks that you like the Sacred Chants of Devi, the Devi prayer, and I did that from that space that if anything's not right, I will feel it. And you work on it till you can sit there and not move. And when you in that space and not move, and it works, you just trust that maybe someone else will will get that. You know, a lot of this music was made, Shakti, where I had no idea what effect it would have on people, but I knew the effect it had on me. So I learned to trust that. Of course, not everyone gets my music, I accept that. But just by being in that space and saying, okay, it's working, that to me, you know, and that's why it's so important to nurture my own system and to keep my sensitivity like that. That's really the process. So the second part, not only to do my daily practice, but to be in nature.
Right.
So being in nature is incredible because you're away from all the mind chatter. You know, we have a collective mind chatter. That's why I don't like being in London. You go there, it's like a wall of mind mess, you know. And I live in a beautiful place, and I've been very lucky to do that. And I also grew up in nature, too, with the grace of my mother and father. And to be in nature, it's very beautiful. It reminded me, my sitar teacher said that, you know, the ancient ragas of Indian classical music, these are the melodies. They existed thousands and thousands of years ago. Indian classical music has been the custodian to keep the ancient knowledge of Gandharva Ved. Well, we can talk about that later, but Gandharva Ved cataloged all the different melodies and how the melodies changed when the sun came up in the sky. And this is the basis still of Indian classical music. So there are different melodies and ragas for different times of the day. And my sitar teacher showed me this firsthand. He said, what we're going to do tomorrow, I'd been practicing all day, my fingers were quite sore. And he said, we're going to get up at dawn and we're going to walk in the fields. I thought, wow, great. That's new, a new way to teach music. So we did that and we were chatting, it was still dark.
Is this in India?
This was in England. Yeah. And so we were walking in the fields and the sun just popped up over the horizon. He had previously said to me, listen to the melody of the birds. And before dawn, there is some bird song. And it's a little bit sparser, but I listened to the melodies. And when the sun appeared on the horizon, all the melodies changed, quite dramatically. In fact, the whole energy of nature changed. Yeah. And he said, now this is it, you see. In the ancient time, the rishis, the wise men, they didn't claim to compose this music. They said it was the music that all of nature was singing. And so Gandharva Ved, Indian classical music, is very much the music of nature. If you play it to plants, they grow like you put fertilizer on it. Of all music, you know, they played to plants, the secret life of plants. They play the Indian classical music, it's like they try to wrap themselves around the speakers.
So you're not only trained in Western classical music, you're trained in
Indian classical
music. What about African?
African music was total immersion, 2
Yeah.
years there, teaching at the conservatoire, playing with the African musicians, traveling to the districts, Swahili. So the Maasai music is very different from the Luo music and the Kikuyu music.
Craig, thank you so much. You've shared so much beautiful wisdom, fascinating stories, inspiration, so much richness there for us all. Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful to talk with you.
And thank you so much for watching and being with us, and join me again on the next Heart to Heart with me, Shakti Sundari.